on a really topsy-turvy day to end what has been a wild quarter. We look like, Carol, this is going to be an awful day here. Markets are down 1-2% here across the board. But as we get to the closing bells, almost all of the major indices in the green.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked, right? What a different day from where we started at 9:30 this morning to where we are today, to see all of these major averages in the green. And I'm looking at a VIX that's barely higher, just below 22, despite, I feel like, the swings we continue to see in the trade from day to day.
Yeah, unclear to me exactly what happened midday when you started seeing quite a bit of buying here. Was it the fact that investors were coming in and buying the dip? Does it have to do with the end of the quarter here? Unclear to me exactly what the prompt was for this. However, I will say the S&P 500 was down as much as 1.7% in today's trade. It's up about 0.6% now.
Yeah, I mean, quarter end, a little bit of window dressing perhaps, but don't forget we also have non-farm payrolls at the end of the week to get to, and there might be a lot more volatility to come. And Carol, to your point, that VIX at 22, it was much, much higher than that just after the opening bell this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Here right now, we're looking at an S&P with the majority of the stocks in the green, about 380 stocks roughly moving higher on the day. And that includes some big names like an Apple, Visa, Walmart, Berkshire Hathaway, AbbVie, some of the other big cap tech names sitting this one out. But it doesn't matter. This is enough to pull the S&P 500 off of the abyss for the day, which was down more than 1.5%. It's going to end the day higher by about 0.5%. We should point out, despite that, here on a monthly basis, the S&P down 6% and down 5% for the quarter. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up more than 400 points here on the day, though, like the other indices, is going to finish the month and the quarter lower, down about 1% here over 3 months. The NASDAQ Composite down 24 points, or about 0.1% here on the day. The NASDAQ 100 unchanged, but both of those indices lower by more than 8 to 10%, depending on which one you pick. And let's take a look at the Russell. It's sitting this one out here on the day. It did claw itself off of the lows of the day, but still finishing down 0.6% on the day. And for the quarter, Carol Massar, it is down 10%.
Wow, that's a big move to the downside. S&P 500, if you looked at it earlier today, the split in terms of winners and losers, very different. So here we are at the close. And guys, we've got 390 names in the S&P 500 gaining ground today, 109 to the downside, and Vonnie 4 unchanged.
Yeah, and if you look into the map, Carol, it's so fascinating. It's basically a green pie today, right? Most sectors, with the exception of consumer discretionary, higher, and that was down by just 0.2%. But if you look from the top, it is those defensive type of sectors that did best. So consumer staples, financials, energy, materials.
All right, let me get to some of the individual gainers. I probably could have changed my list, but this is what I came up with about midday today. All right, Newsmax, how to do it, an IPO. I mean, at its highs, this stock, up 735%. I don't even know how you explain this one. We had opening 40% above their IPO. $10 a piece was the IPO. Stock closing at just under 80.
What's the explanation for this? Because this actually isn't how you do an IPO, because technically that's 735%, or at least 734% of it should have actually gone to Newsmax and not to secondary investors.
Anything left on the table? Should we even ask? I mean, I
don't know. Who were their bankers? Because I would like to talk to them.
I don't know. We need to talk to him. I mean, Tim and I have been talking about this too. Like, how do you make sense? A lot of volatility in trading. We did see it halt at one point. I kind of can't wait until their first earnings so that we get a peek a little bit more into the business there. All right, moving along. AIG, guys. This was up about just shy of 4%. Held an investor day today. Shares rallying after the insurer authorized the repurchase of as much as $7.5 billion of its common stock. It also made some talk about planning to allocate more to private assets, looking to grow its net investment income. All of this coming in their investor day. But nonetheless, this was easily an outperformer today. Here's another one. Corcept Therapeutics up 109%. It's a $10.5 billion market cap pharma company. Shares surging as much as 114% at its high today. Heavy volume. Drug developer said a late-stage trial of its experimental combination therapy for ovarian cancer met its main goal. So investors moving big time into this one.
Can I just add an honorable mention, which was Warner, since we're talking about the media, Warner Brothers Discovery actually rallied about 3.5% on the day. There was an interesting report, Carol Massar, that a lot of cord cutters, those people have canceled their subscriptions, having second thoughts now because the price of streaming services have gone up.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Absolutely. Well, for our benefit, thank God.
Something's got to give, right? Yeah.
Come back.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I'll take
And on a
that.
high note, let's go to a down note with Tim Stenovec.
Yeah, let's talk about the Mag 7 Total
Ouch.
Return Index. You know, initially, this entire index was down more than 3% on the day today, down 3.6%. It ended up, with the buying closing down only 0.4%. It does, of course, include the Mag 7 stocks. At 1.6 of the 7 were lower. 4 of the 7 fell today, still weighing on the indices: Tesla, Nvidia, Amazon, and Microsoft. Moving on to Moderna, shares falling by close to 9% today. We did see vaccine and biotech stocks fall after Peter Marks left the FDA. He's a top regulator, casting uncertainty about the future of vaccines and cutting-edge gene therapies. In his resignation letter, Marks said he'd been willing to work with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to, quote, address the secretary's concerns regarding vaccine safety and transparency. But he continued saying it became clear that truth and transparency are not desired by the secretary, but rather he wishes subservient confirmation of his misinformation and lies. Interestingly enough, later in the session, we saw Cantor Fitzgerald analysts come out with a note on biotech analysts saying that the Trump administration should reevaluate HHS RFK Jr.'s role after this vaccine official stepped down.
And we just point out, I mean, I was looking at the decliners on the day, Tim. I mean, at least if you go into the small cap space, it's all biotechs. Like it's the top 20, 25 decliners were in the biotech space.
Yeah, no shortage of decliners to choose from today. Pretty remarkable moves when it comes to the biotech space. Finally, a little M&A news today. Rocket Companies down 7.37%. This after the company said it is acquiring Mr. Cooper Group in an all-stock deal valued at $9.4 billion. This will create a mortgage behemoth that handles 1 in every 6 mortgages in the U.S. Shares down by about 7.4% today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's take a look at what yields did on the day, because that was just as wild of a ride as what we saw in the equities space here. You look at that 2-year yield, and I'm going to point that out. 2 basis points lower on the day. But here's the thing. At one point, it was down 8 basis points on the day. At one point, it was up a basis point on the day. And we saw similar moves on the 10-year, on the 30-year, on the 5-year as well. So a lot of volatility, even though the end result of it all was relatively unchanged across the board. But it just gets to that sense here that investors are really having a hard time figuring out what the direction is for this market, whether it's in the equity space or in fixed income.
Yeah, it's kind of like, where do I go? Where do I go? Hey, listen, I just want to get back to you because you asked, Romaine, and I like to answer your questions. Newsmax's offering led by Digital Offering LLC. Mm-hmm. I don't even know who that is.
Okay, well, we're going to find out who they are and why they left us 700 and something percent on the table.
Now the ball is in your court.
I just want to just point out real quick, too, because on Treasury, sorry to keep going back and forth here, because I was looking at I mean, you actually made money on a total return basis, not only on Treasuries, but even if you were invested in just total global fixed income. So, you know, basically investment grade bonds as well as Treasury bonds. And this was like the widest outperformance we've seen in the fixed income space relative to the equity space since at least 2022. So significant to see that the relative safety of fixed income actually worked to the advantage of a lot of these investors this quarter.
Yeah, interesting. And to see how much then investors have really pulled back on equities and looking for something else, right?
Have you been invited to Jeff Bezos' wedding?
Maybe.
I was told the invitation is in the mail still.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why.
Who told you that, Tim?
They're not doing an Evite this year.
They're doing it in Venice.
They're doing a real invitation.
I can't understand how they're going to only invite 200 people. Do you know how difficult it is to invite only 200 people to an event?
Well, if you have Jeff Bezos' security, I'm sure they can make sure to keep out the unwashed masses. But Venice was kind of upset about this. They were like, the Venetians, they were like, how are we going to handle this influx of all these, rich folks and their super yachts and super cars and taking over?
Did you say the Venetian in Las Vegas, Romaine? No?
No.
Can I just say
this is
it's actually the real. The real
I'm just checking.
Venetians.
Okay.
It sounds like Mr. and Mrs. or soon to be Mr. and Mrs. Bezos have screened out some guests.
Screened out.
Well, it's apparently.
Is he going to invite like the president? Because wasn't he at the inauguration?
I saw that.
That's
definitely Ivanka is on the list according to People magazine and the Kushners.
I did see in an earlier report that the president has been invited.
Yeah.
What do you get Jeff Bezos and his wife?
Anything they want, apparently.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Candle?
Candle?
A pillow for a space.
Does he need like an ironing
Trip?
board? Or
Down comes
does he have like a registry where there's just like pots and pans and
I don't know, but they were definitely in the
stuff
Dolce & Gabbana store on Sunday, which was not what I was doing. They were shopping for wedding
How'd you know
dresses.
this? Are you spying on them?
No, I keep up with the old TMZs of the world.
You're stalking them? No. All right, that's a wrap. Across platform on radio, TV, YouTube, Bloomberg Originals. Monday is almost over. All right, guys, we will see you again, same time, same place tomorrow.